Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Reciting these mantras immediately on such an auspicious day, the appearance of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Reciting these mantras immediately brings forth a sense of gratitude that's overwhelming. What would we have known about the true impact of these mantras, even if we already knew something about these mantras due to tradition? Srila Prabhupada demonstrated to the utmost the potency of dedication to the parampara as the key for entering into knowledge of the Supreme Absolute Truth. He always pointed to devotional service, just as Krishna points to it in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna cannot be known by metaphysical speculation. Krishna cannot be known by mystic yoga. Krishna can't be known by pious activities. Krishna can only be known through devotional service. So when you think about Srila Prabhupada's mission, you must think of devotional service. Because what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Only by devotional service can I be understood. So what Srila Prabhupada gave us, and what brings these mantras to life, so to speak, is the opportunity to engage in devotional service. And the more we use our life to engage in devotional service, the more we can understand Krishna. Krishna can't be conquered so much so by intellectual ability. Krishna is conquered by humble devotional service, which does include using intelligence. So we are, as Srila Prabhupada would often say, we are the devotional service movement. We are not the religious belief movement. You may believe this way, you may believe that way, but what are we doing with our senses? How are our senses being engaged for Krishna's pleasure? From Srila Prabhupada's single-handed determination to spread bhakti all over the world. Why did he have that determination? Because it was the order of his spiritual master. He took every order of his spiritual master as his life and soul. He was not selective about it. Oh, this one is too difficult. We'll leave that aside. This one is low-hanging fruit. We'll go for that. He took everything his spiritual master instructed so seriously. Sometimes his godbrothers would actually say, why does he focus so much, for example, on the Gaudiya Math's failure to establish a governing board? Why does he focus so much on that? That was just one thing that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, among many things. Why does your Swami, they would say, your Bhaktivedanta Swami harp so much on this point? Whereas Srila Prabhupada, and he would never let them forget it, pointed out this is the litmus test. So Srila Prabhupada gave us many instructions for us all. Some of them we have yet to realize. Some of them we have yet to see how to apply them, but we should always think about them. That's the example Srila Prabhupada put forth. Some or other, after all these years since his departure, his disciples and grand disciples and now grand disciples we're trying to stick together. This is unique in Gaudiya Vaishnava history. Usually in Gaudiya history, when the Acharya disappears, it's every man for himself. So the fact that Srila Prabhupada emphasized that somehow or other we should stay together is an instruction that has produced a unique effect. There are disagreements, there are different persons trying to stay together under Srila Prabhupada's banner, but every legitimate disciple of Srila Prabhupada sacrifices in some way to keep his mission together. And it's a sacrifice because we always don't all agree. Prabhupada's philosophy, he emphasizes unity in diversity. You can't stamp out the diversity, and there must be unity. This takes so much spiritual maturity and a lot of humility. Sometimes you may think, oh, it must be so much fun to be an ISKCON leader. Or you might think, I feel sorry for those guys. But let me tell you, everyone, if you're going to go the distance in Prabhupada's mission, you have to sometimes swallow the soap and blow bubbles. In the 7th canto, there are so many purports, one after the other, where Srila Prabhupada writes that unless one is humble, he cannot go on in bhakti. Sooner or later, you'll hit an obstacle. He did this to me. He understood. She misunderstood. This was done. That was done. No one recognized my glories. On and on it goes. At some point in your devotional life, you will hit that experience. And it's a test. And it's not easy unless we call out to Krishna. And that is success. So for the sake of Srila Prabhupada's pleasure, trying to follow his instruction, through all the bumps in the roads and ups and downs, we stick together. We don't always agree. How can that be possible? As I often explain to devotees when they tell me about an argument with another devotee, I say, tell me about your home life. You have no arguments at home? Oh, well, let's change the subject. So even in your own home, you have to handle unity and diversity. You can't get your own husband or wife to agree 100% with you. And yet you expect all the devotees you encounter in But Srila Prabhupada's order was agree, disagree, or whatever. Some or others stick together. We're trying to do that. And that is a unique occurrence in Gaudiya Vaishnava history. That a mission this big, there are way over 500 ISKCON centers in the world. When Prabhupada departed, they were just 108. And that was considered a legendary, inconceivable accomplishment. Now they're far beyond 500. Actually, it's getting up near 1,000. I just remembered, in India alone, they're close to 500. So how does all this stay together? Obviously, sometimes there are compromises with one another, sometimes overlooking grievances, tolerating. But this was Srila Prabhupada's instruction that somehow or other we stay together through thick and thin. Sometimes it gets a bit thin. But in the decades since his departure, things somehow or other have persevered. And that is Srila Prabhupada's mercy. I could tell you some stories of different Vaishnava organizations. True stories, I know, because I heard directly. One founder acharya of his modest-sized mission, in the years before his departure, he set up a particular system for his mission to go on and basically told everyone, this is the way it's going to be. If you don't like it, go home and fight. No mention about please stay together, please sacrifice, keep things unified. No, this is the way it is. I know some of you don't like it. Now you can all go home and fight. Srila Prabhupada drilled into us again and again, stay together. And that is a challenge sometimes. And it requires humility and humiliation. And everyone hates to be humiliated. Sometimes we look at bhakti as an opportunity to fly our flag, to assert ourselves. And then sooner or later, we realize to persevere in bhakti takes humility. Humility becomes easier when you learn to appreciate the qualities of other devotees. As you grow in your spiritual life, you should become more and more adept at seeing the qualities in others that you don't have, the qualities in others that Krishna appreciates. So on this appearance day of Srila Prabhupada, by his mercy, by his sacrifice, by his surrender, we all are here right now. Srila Prabhupada said that if you want to know him, and I hope so many of you want to know him, he said, if you want to know me, read my books. He said, everything I ever wanted to say is in my books. In fact, he said, my books are better than me. In other words, better than being around me is that you read the books, read his books. So the more you take that seriously, the more you'll know who is Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes devotees ask me, what was it like when you first saw Prabhupada? What was it like being around him? I've seen Srila Prabhupada in moments when he's making very intense demands. I wonder how many of you would have been able to handle that without running out of the temple room. What was it like to be around Srila Prabhupada? What was it like to see Srila Prabhupada? The answer I usually give is, you could clearly see he's from the spiritual world. He's from the spiritual world coming down, and we're catching hold of his instructions, trying to go from the material world up to the spiritual world. That's the difference. But for you today, in your present situation, how can you know Srila Prabhupada? By taking his words very seriously. If you want to know me, read my books. My books, by your reading them, you're getting a better experience than you're being physically around Srila Prabhupada. Can you understand that? You might think, what's a book? I want to be with the person. But the person is saying, my books are better. So what are you going to do? So we hope that all of you have a deep desire to know Srila Prabhupada, and then you can better understand Srila Prabhupada's representatives. And in this way, you have access through Srila Prabhupada's books to the world's greatest wisdom, presented so nicely for your understanding. One day you'll appreciate how much labor Srila Prabhupada put into presenting the bhakti knowledge in a way that you can understand it. I can tell you because for the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, for the BBT, I deal with producing translations of Vaishnava texts, and I can see the technicalities that can overwhelm you. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said this, Srila Jiva Goswami said that, Sanatana Goswami says this. We would have never come to bhakti just by associating with those classic texts. And then you can see why Srila Prabhupada's contribution is so phenomenal. While traveling around the world 7 or 8 times, he left all this literature which took the messages of the previous acharyas, honed them, and presented them in a way we can digest. Now you might say, well, there's some things in Prabhupada's books that they're hard for us to understand. That'll always be there. But if you read again and again and again, you get realization. So what does the Svetasvatara Upanishad say? Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata garo tasyaite katita hyarta prakashante mahatmana. For someone who has deep faith in their spiritual master and Krishna, all the meanings of the Vedic knowledge become revealed. So it's not exactly by intellectual prowess, although a bhakti yogi should have knowledge. It's by pleasing one's spiritual master, pleasing Krishna. You can be illiterate, but what does Krishna promise you in Bhagavad Gita? Tesham satayuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. For those who are constantly devoted, that means engaged in service, with priti, with love, with affection, I give them direct instruction in their heart. So we're expressing our gratitude today for Krishna sending his confidential representative, and we are trying to please him. Even after 50 or so years since his departure, there are things we don't understand, but we're trying. We feel a sense of indebtedness. That is alien to today's culture. The last thing a typical denizen of Kali Yuga wants to feel is being indebted to someone. You want to be free. I have no obligations. I have no debts. I don't owe anyone anything. I'm doing my own thing when I want to, how I want to. At the drop of a hat, I just do my own thing. That is perfection. But indebtedness means you realize what someone has given you, and you want to try and pay that back. And of course, our debt to Srila Prabhupada is impossible to pay back. So today we're glorifying Srila Prabhupada as the representative of Srila Vyasadeva. He's presented intact the message of Srila Vyasadeva, and just for that accomplishment, he's glorified. And of course, he took that message of Vyasadeva and spread it all over the world. But just for presenting the message as it is, we're glorifying Prabhupada. What to speak of the unlimited further glories. So now I'd like to present for Srila Prabhupada's pleasure my humble, tiny attempt at an offering. Dear Srila Prabhupada, please accept my prostrated obeisances at your lotus feet, my only shelter in the unremitting storm known as material existence. When I contemplate the utter wreckage of my life before encountering your mercy, I shudder and shake. During BP, before Prabhupada, the appalling years before Prabhupada, I superficially thrived as a Manhattan enjoyer, externally living a privileged, educated life of elitist benefits. Internally, however, I was a desert, an existential wasteland. Society goaded and pressured me, reassuring, "You've scaled the mountain to the pinnacle. Now breathe the rarefied atmosphere and delight." Nevertheless, the thought terrified me. Is this all that be? The one who dies with the most toys and acclaim wins? The overpowering cosmic reality seemed nothingness is. A nihilistic pseudo-siddhanta reigned supreme. On this crazy planet, devise your own truth, make your own light, as your brief life fades in and out of the vast darkness, coldness, and indifference of the universe. The Patibhasa Sutra, that means the main sutra that sheds light on everything else in a scripture. The Patibhasa Sutra guiding whatever Kali Yuga fleeting relationships. Don't try to lead me. Don't try to follow me. Just walk together with me through the chaos. Dispelling the spiritual and material deadliness of such massive inner devastation, you brought me back to the infinitely attractive Sri Sri Radha Krishna, especially as they combine as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not only did you give us the consciousness of them, but also you lavished upon us knowledge of their pure devotional service, the most precious gem. Among the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service that Rupa Goswami describes, the trait of rareness is stunning. Knowing this, how can we ever dare to think we deserve the opportunity to render even neophyte bhakti? What to speak of a possibility to serve in spotless devotion? Our material qualifications and achievements cannot even interest Krishna, to say nothing of attracting him to us. Consequently, I seemed trapped in a paradox, a spiritual cul-de-sac, no through road ahead. The standard of pure devotion is so atypical and anomalous, it sounds beyond supernatural. Yet nothing else can attract Krishna. What to do? Only your eternal status as a pure devotee can resolve my dilemma. Nothing else will suffice. If I selflessly serve your lotus feet, the impossible attainment of Shuddha Bhakti, pure bhakti, becomes within reach. Because of you, Krishna can agree to notice me and my juvenile attempts at pleasing him. Bhaktivinoda Thakur declares the reality of your place in my life. Krishna is yours. You have the power to give him to me. I am simply running behind you shouting, Krishna, Krishna. Please establish this fallen soul in your service, which will allow Sri Sri Radha Krishna and Sri Panchatattva to shine their grace upon me, your hopeful servant. Srila Prabhupada ki.